For 25 years, Sarah Mitchell lived in a relentless cycle. She woke before sunrise, worked 10 hours at a local warehouse, and returned home to start a second shift of cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Her husband rarely helped, and while her teenage son Ethan loved her, he didn't see the weight she carried. She stopped feeling like a mother or a wife. She felt like an employee inside her own home, providing for everyone while no one provided for her. Hundreds of miles away, Richard Collins lived a different reality. When a crisis emerged, his world responded with immediate speed, private jets and drivers. Sarah was anchored to the ground by bills and exhaustion. Richard moved across the country at 30,000 feet. They were two people living in the same country, yet their worlds were separated by a distance that no map could measure. The routine broke when Ethan collapsed during basketball practice. The diagnosis was a rare neurological condition. Sarah's world narrowed down to a single question: could he be cured? There was only one specialist capable of treating Ethan, but thousands were waiting. Appointments were booked years in advance. Sarah worked overtime and took out loans, but every time she tried, a new barrier dropped. Then, the secondary collapse. Her husband Michael fell ill and passed away within weeks. Sarah stood at his funeral widowed, exhausted, and carrying the impossible weight of her son's survival alone. She sold everything she owned and moved Ethan to a small rural house. She had stopped trying to reach the specialist. Her only goal now was to make her son's remaining time comfortable. The healthcare system had failed her, and her resources were gone. She was now in the middle of nowhere, further from a cure than she had ever been. While Sarah adjusted to her new quiet reality, Richard Collins was facing a corporate emergency. He needed to be in another city by sunrise. But a violent winter storm grounded every flight. Refusing to wait, Richard ordered his driver to take the car, insisting they could push through the weather. The drive was a disaster. Visibility completely vanished. The luxury car struggled against the wind and ice as they moved deeper into the countryside, away from the main highways. Then, the car died. There was no cell signal and no passing traffic. In the dark, Richard was no longer a powerful executive. He was just a man stranded in the cold. The storm acted as a leveler. It neutralized his wealth and his schedule, reducing him to a state of basic survival, forcing him to look for help on foot. Richard and his driver stumbled through the rain until they saw a faint light from a small house. They knocked, and Sarah opened the door. Despite having almost nothing, Sarah welcomed them. She shared her tea and the little food she had. Her years of being the one everyone depended on had left her with a reflexive kindness toward anyone in need. As the storm raged outside, they sat together and talked. Sarah told him about Ethan and the illness, speaking with the quiet acceptance of a mother who had tried every door and found them all locked. She mentioned the specialist, the world-famous doctor who was the only hope they had left, but whom she would never be able to reach. Richard asked for the name. When Sarah said it, he froze. He told her that the specialist was his younger brother, and they were supposed to have breakfast together the next morning. Sarah had moved to this specific, isolated spot to wait for the end. But that isolation was the only reason she was in the path of the one person who could bypass the waitlist. The next morning, Richard personally drove them to the city. He didn't just give them a name, he walked them past the barriers and straight to his brother. Treatment began immediately. Months of recovery followed, then a return to school. 2 years later, Ethan was back on the basketball court. Often, we view a closed door as a finality. Sarah's move to the country appeared to be the end of her search. Yet that very obstacle, her forced retreat into isolation, placed her exactly where she needed to be. It's a reminder that a delay in our plans isn't always a permanent no. The storm that seems to block the road can be the very event that forces us toward an answer we couldn't have found on the highway. One evening, Sarah sat on her porch watching the sunset in a house that was finally quiet for the right reasons. She had spent a lifetime caring for others, and in her darkest moment, that same spirit of care had invited her miracle through the front door.